What is up, everyone? Welcome to another weekly news video. There's a few things to rehash on the last week that I want to give you updates on, but then we're also going to touch on this news from PWCC that Sports Card Radio dropped in their live stream yesterday. There's a few thoughts on that I want to share with you also. Stay tuned for that at the very end. Now, in terms of the recap, the rehash that I just alluded to, I think the big thing of the last week that, almost all of you would be aware of by now is this Bleacher breaks situation. We spoke about it at length on this channel multiple times. If you're not aware what I'm referring to, please check out my videos. These ones in particular, these two over here, and then the whatnot video if you haven't seen anything. Essentially, a breaker was messing up and sending cards to the wrong customers, and not just any cards, big top dollar cards like this, one of one. It's only worth a few $1,000s, but that is still, top dollar to a lot of people. The thing I want to update you on is that the individual who was expecting the card 8 months ago before they lost it has actually now been given the card by the breaker after somebody else had hit it in a repack. I'm not sure how they reimbursed the person that genuinely and with good intentions bought that repack and hit this card. It wasn't that customer's fault. I'd imagine they would have refunded that customer and then given them some form of credit or just money for the value of the card itself. But this is now in the hands of the person that should have hit it, back 8 months ago. And there's a few other people that had other cards go missing by Bleacher breaks that have also had, additional compensation provided to them, either by finding the card after it all of a sudden magically, showed up again, or they got given, overcompensation essentially is the word I want to look for. They basically went above and beyond and gave them a little bit more money. Now, the general gist of this is a lot of people still think these guys are scammers. I think it's still a very genuine position for you guys to take. I can't begrudge anyone for taking that position. Me personally, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's more likely they're just terrible business people and don't know how to run a breaking business. And again, that's very, tough to say because they might get offended by that. But at the end of the day, you're making these kinds of mistakes. You sort of, dig in your own hole at the end of the day, right? You can't really, get away with it and think you're going to get off scot-free. So very disappointing to see, very curious to see what happens next. I'm also very curious to see what Whatnot's response to this is going to be in the long run, because we also talked about, some issues in this video, literally right here, that you can also see down below, that they're sort of enabling this on their platform. They're not really doing enough to try and make, their platform a better place. And, I say this all the time, Fanatics is coming, whether you want them or not in this hobby. Fanatics have definitely shown their muscle so far. And, I think at some point Fanatics is going to have their own breaking platform in some capacity. I think it would be beyond idiotic of them to not do that, right? They've invested so much money into manufacturing process, getting all the licenses, buying up certain companies, to make your process even more robust and to strengthen that stranglehold you have, on the market, would be to have your own platform, because then you can stipulate, okay, if you want to buy a product from us, you have to break on our platform. And then by doing that, not only are they making money, by selling you boxes and cases of stuff directly, they're then going to make money off every single transaction that you sell on that platform. Now, this might work in many different ways, and I can talk to that a little bit more in a video next week, but that's where I think, things are going. So I'm very keen to get your thoughts on that, as well. Now, in terms of, other content that I put out this week, this was very interesting from PWCC. This will be a good transition into the Sports Card Radio situation. So they've basically come out and announced they're going to start authenticating Pokemon boxes. This hasn't got a whole lot of views, 320 views. But I essentially talked through the whole process around how, I think they've missed the boat when it comes to figuring out which customers these are actually for. The general gist of the situation is they're going to take a sealed box of Pokemon, and this would be the more vintage stuff, so like the first edition TCG stuff. Record the whole thing on camera, basically bust open the seal, check that every pack looks genuine, and then put some PWCC stickers on there, anti-tamper proof stickers. Those ones that you rip and then it basically leaves the void mark once you've ripped it off, sort of like what eBay did for the authentication program. Essentially do that, and then people will buy the boxes and have, peace of mind that the box is, free from fraud, free from, scammers. It's still an interesting situation because I'm not sure how much that's going to protect an individual. I did ask the question to PWCC that I still don't have a response on, in that they talk about giving a guarantee behind it, which is why it's interesting and why it piqued my interest so much so to make a video, right? Because we've talked about Baseball Card Exchange a lot on this channel. They don't offer a guarantee for their authentication service. Now, you're going to hear a lot more of my thoughts on this. If you haven't seen the video, please check it out. But essentially, they're offering this guarantee. So the risk is that, you buy the box on their platform and you get the guarantee then, right? They can't answer for me right now. If you were to sell that after already buying it on their platform and somebody else has the issue, is that person you sell it to going to be covered by that guarantee as well? I would very much doubt if that was the case. I think most likely, you're only guaranteed if you buy it directly from them and you are the same person and you haven't sold it on to anyone else, which again, doesn't really help anyone. You're ripping off the seal to inspect the packs in the first place. I don't know why collectors would want that. I think collectors want the seal because that's part and parcel of keeping sealed product, right? It's more genuine from that perspective. Yeah, you get a bit more comfort that somebody's inspected it and there's no G.I. Joe packs in there, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. It almost ruins the integrity of owning sealed product. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, just let me know, because I think it's a very interesting one. Again, I alluded to touching on what Sports Card Radio flagged in their video yesterday. It's essentially this, that 30 people were let go by PWCC, some of which I believe weren't given any PTO or severance payments. And it spoke to some pretty serious issues potentially coming, from PWCC. There's a few things in there where it talks to employees, being promised things and employees, I think there's a word in there, basically sacrifices and doing all these things and then basically getting, reimbursed in the future. I believe PWCC's, chairman had come out with a statement today. Sorry, it wasn't a statement, it's an email. I had to pause the video there to go and try and find it. It was on Sports Card Radio story. You can sort of see here, it's essentially, the person talking to them doing it for a reason, right? This is from the CEO, not from the chairman. Basically talking about, them having to let people go for a specific reason. Apparently there's more information to come to light. Again, I thought this was a very interesting situation because Sports Card Radio were talking to, okay, does this mean there are issues in PWCC? Now, a few people have commented on around them having longer, times associated with getting cards shipped from them and things like that. And they were, going down the rabbit hole of, okay, is this going to be the end for PWCC? Is this the start of the end? I think it's very interesting. I'm very curious to see what Sports Card Radio have to say tomorrow, because they've alluded to having even more information than you would have just seen in that email. So let's sort of see what happens next. Like, given that I work in external audit, and I feel like I reference this a lot, but I see, restructures and things like this all the time at these large businesses, right? And one thing you sort of need to keep front of mind when you're, trying to assess this situation is, having 30 people lose their job and being laid off is not always, a bad thing. Like, yes, it sucks for those individuals, and I feel terribly sorry for them. Having been through redundancies, myself in the past, many, many years ago, I know what it's like to go through that, and I don't wish that on anyone. But from a PWC perspective, or PWCC perspective, they might be doing things internally that make them a better business, right? They might be becoming more efficient. They might be streamlining things. We don't know if these individuals that were given, no redundancies or no severance, as you refer to them in the States, was done so because they breached a non-compete clause. We don't know what their employment agreements were. There's all these questions, right? And it's always hard to just take the opinion of a disgruntled employee. Now, I'm not saying they're lying, but you guys, again, understand the gist of what I'm trying to say. Very keen to see what Sports Card Radio talk about tomorrow, because these guys typically get good information, or I shouldn't say typically, almost always. So there's obviously more to the story. So sort of watch this space. I wouldn't jump down the throat of PWCC just yet, is essentially where I'm trying to get to. But let's see what happens and then go from there. I'll also say, PWCC as a business does not have the best track record with doing things ethically or doing things the right way. Now, I also want to quickly talk about, a live stream I did today. It's essentially the first one on my channel. It was actually for the Sports Card Therapist. I was on there with Steve Splendor. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out. But there's a new feature, I think it's on StreamYard or YouTube, where it lets you stream a live to multiple channels at the same time. So I got to stream this to my own channel. I need to do a proper thumbnail for it and everything. But it was a really good chat. We spoke about many different things within the hobby. You can probably get a bit more insight into me as an individual based on some of the questions Rob asked me. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out. It goes for about an hour and 15. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but I would, greatly appreciate it if you did. Now, I also had a few people talk to me about, Sports Card Radio having Ken Goldin on their show, and they're basically talking to Sports Card Radio being sellouts and all that sort of thing. I'll be honest, I'll be upfront as well. I think it is pretty interesting. Again, I thought it was pretty funny when it's like seeing Ken pop up, because if you weren't aware, it sort of happened out of the blue that not many were expecting. the tinfoil hat people will say that, you know, because they've been talking about Goldin and the auction platform for quite some time, and then all of a sudden having Ken on before his show drops raises lots of eyebrows. And I think the brothers themselves can't argue with people coming to that conclusion. I think it's pretty interesting. I've obviously asked them the question in the past about, you know, being aligned to Goldin. They told me no. I take their word for it because the guys have, you know, always talked to certain things the right way in their videos. They've always flagged things for the hobby for the better. So I'm very curious to see, you know, if they were joking around or were lying about it. But again, I take their word for it. I don't think they can begrudge anyone for asking that question because, again, you know, you look at the content of their channel, you know, since their inception and also through their website, they've always, you know, pushed people having that inquisitive mind, all right? They've pushed people asking that question. So I don't think they're going to get offended by people asking that because that's essentially what they do themselves, and they want more people in the hobby to do that, right? Like myself, Sportsco Radio put out content because they want to educate you as an individual, as a viewer. They want you to be across things and they want you to ask questions and ask the tough questions. So I don't think they're going to shy away, you know, from you saying they're sellouts to Goldin. From their perspective, I think they'd be more than willing to have people on their live show to have a debate about the situation. Now, I'm not putting words in their mouth, but just how they've handled things in the past, I think they'd be more than willing to do that. Now, again, I thought it was pretty interesting. I think it was just pretty funny from them. I've had chats with the brothers as well. So, again, if you think they're sellouts, let me know down in the comments below. Like I said, I've asked them the question. They said they're not, so I take their word for it. Again, the brothers, I don't think you can begrudge anyone for thinking that once again. So that's sort of it for today. I hope you liked the video. I'm very keen to get your thoughts on everything we discussed down in the comments below. There's a few things that were pretty spicy this week, and some of you might have got a little bit annoyed by putting out 3 videos related to this Bleacher break situation, but almost everything was a bit unique in terms of the 3 videos or 4 videos that, you know, I put out. There's a lot of talking points that I wanted to focus in on, and you guys will know that if you're regular on the channel, I like to have, you know, deeper discussions about things, right? I like to raise the questions around the bigger hobby problems, right? Because you see something small, but once you dig into that and you sort of crack that shell, you can sort of see, you know, where everything is coming from. What does it impact? What does it mean for this? What does it mean for that? So hope you guys appreciated it as always. Again, I appreciate your support and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.